a star. It's on the forefront of the mind of anyone seeking a career in the music industry. That road usually led to Diddy. And for a 10-year-old boy, this would lead to a traumatic experience after Diddy allegedly used his influence to not only destroy the innocence of a child, but to strike fear into his family. Welcome to Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, the Diddy Saga, Episode 15, Master of Coercion. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite. I'm your host, Jim Chapman. And before we get into today's episode, we have some new global celebrity members that I want to welcome to our Patreon. And we're going to start with Nicole. And Nicole didn't put her last name on the Patreon, but she is from Felton, Pennsylvania, and I was not familiar with Felton. But I researched it, and Felton, y'all, is one of those super small towns. They are just so appealing to me. And get this, the entire town of Felton, only 501 people. As of the last census. 501 people. I love that. And I looked at some of the pictures. It looks absolutely beautiful. And thank you for supporting on Patreon, Miss Nicole. And next we have Miss Christy Henry. And Christy is from what I would consider a pretty recognizable place, thanks to a very prominent family, and that is Bentonville, Arkansas. Of course, Bentonville, Arkansas, y'all, the birthplace of Walmart. So welcome to the global celebrity tier on Patreon, Miss Christy Henry. So glad to have you and so blessed to have your support. And lastly, this week, we have Miss Christy Formby. And Miss Christy Formby is from Winnemucca, Nevada. And here's a little interesting piece of history for you. Winnemucca is named after Sarah Winnemucca, who is the first Native American to publish an autobiography. This was in 1883, and it's known as the most enduring autobiography ever written on the life of a Native American during that time. So welcome, Miss Christy Formby, to the Global Celebrity Patreon. And all of you who haven't done so, go check out the Patreon and consider joining. It's an amazing way to support what we do. You get so many extras, everything from commercial-free early releases to bonus episodes to actual files and documents that we talk about on this show, quarterly gifts, all kinds of things. So go check it out. We would love to have you join us there. All right, so we're going to continue with this 15th episode in the Diddy Saga series. And I'm going to call this one Master of Coercion. And when I'm done, you're going to see why. So a lot has come out since last time I spoke to you. And y'all, it just gets worse and worse as the days go along and the weeks go along in this whole Diddy mess. And so I'm going to reference an article that came out. Just about 5 days ago. This is by the Washington Post, and here's how it reads, and then we'll talk about it. 2 more sexual lawsuits have been filed against Sean Diddy Combs this week, both accusing the billionaire of grooming, sexual misconduct, and retaliatory threats that took place when the plaintiffs were underage. These 2 lawsuits are separate filings, but both assert that Combs abused his power and influence, coercing minors into sexual activity by promising them stardom in the music industry. These suits add to the deluge of more than 20 civil cases filed against the music and media giant in the last year, and to Combs' pending federal charges of sex trafficking and racketeering. but stand out for being the youngest of Combs' alleged victims so far. In the first suit, a John Doe plaintiff accuses Combs of assaulting him at a New York City hotel in 2005 when the plaintiff was just 10 years old. The unnamed accuser, who currently resides in California, claims that he then had dreams of becoming a rapper and or actor. His parents hired a career consultant to help him, who suggested they fly to New York to meet with industry power players like Combs. According to the filing, when the plaintiff arrived, the consultant arranged for him to audition for Combs in a New York City hotel room. During the meeting, the plaintiff was left alone with Combs, and after performing a few rap songs, Combs said he could make him a star. The plaintiff was given a soda, and after drinking it, began feeling dizzy. The plaintiff believes the drink was laced with drugs, including but not limited to GHB and ecstasy. Once Doe became unstable, the complaint states that Combs pushed the boy on the hotel room bed. Combs then pulled his penis out of his pants and told the 10-year-old to kiss it before forcing it into the boy's mouth. The boy passed out from shock and fear, and when the plaintiff regained consciousness, Combs was still in the room and the boy's pants were undone, and his anus and buttocks hurt badly. Combs told the plaintiff that he would hurt his parents if he told anyone about what happened. The filing stated that the plaintiff did so anyway soon after, but at the time, the family was so scared of the consequences of reporting Combs, they did not come forward. So quickly on that following. Y'all, as a dad, as a parent, I am so tempted to just slam the parents in this situation. I wasn't in their place. I can only say what I would imagine I would do, which everybody would get their ass kicked, period. I don't give a shit who Sean Combs is. I would beat that ass to death if that were me and that happened. I guess in their mind, they did what they had to do. That being said, this sick motherfucker better never get out of jail. Sorry, but that one fires me up. Let's get to the second filing. In the separate filing, a John Doe victim claims that he was 17 years old when Combs repeatedly sexually assaulted him over a series of encounters in or around 2008. The boy participated in a 3-day audition for Diddy's hit MTV competition series, Making the Band. According to the suit, the plaintiff saw the opportunity online and through newspaper ads and believed this was his chance to break into the music industry. During the audition process, the plaintiff advanced to a stage where contestants met individually in private rooms with Combs and his bodyguard. During his one-on-one interview with Combs, the plaintiff stated that the mogul began to ask him hypothetical questions about responding to sexual pressure. As he asked John Doe questions, Combs began to fondle the plaintiff's genitals and masturbate. Combs emphasized his power of control over the plaintiff's future in the music industry, stating that he had the ability to make or break the plaintiff's career. During another interview with Combs, the plaintiff was instructed to get undressed and prove he could be a sex idol within the band. Combs then allegedly forced the 17-year-old boy to perform oral sex and sodomized him. During a third meeting, Combs allegedly introduced the plaintiff to his bodyguard, named quote-unquote T, and forced the boy to perform oral sex on T as well. According to the lawsuit, Combs framed this as a test of the plaintiff's willingness to do anything necessary to succeed in the music industry. When the plaintiff would show hesitation, Combs said he was not trustworthy. Soon after performing oral sex on the bodyguard, the plaintiff claims he was eliminated from the audition process and unable to gain entry into the music industry for several years. These latest cases were filed in the New York's Supreme Court by the law firm of Tony Busby, the same Texas firm that made headlines last month for announcing they would be representing more than 100 alleged victims against Combs. In a response to the latest suits, Combs maintains via his attorneys that he has never sexually assaulted or trafficked anyone, man or woman, adult or minor, lying. Combs' legal team further asserted that the lawyer behind the lawsuit is interested in media attention rather than the truth, as is obvious from his constant press appearances and a 1-800 number, and stated they have full confidence in proving their client's innocence through the judicial process. Let's talk about these for a second. I already kind of commented on the first one, and I'm going to tell you what, you come down here to South Louisiana and try to pull that shit on anyone, I promise you, you're going to end up in a crab trap in the middle of the swamp. That's how we handle things around here. That's just so disgusting. Sick. Now, you know, when this case first started, a lot of people that are in the know that I spoke with that are sources I will never reveal actually told me Diddy was worse than Epstein. And I took that with a grain of salt because obviously, as bad as Epstein was, and he was the devil, make no mistake, no one could possibly be worse, right? Well, this is starting to prove me totally wrong. I mean, this guy's as bad as it gets. So try as I might to find the legal documents on the case that I just summarized in the article for you. It was filed in the New York Supreme Court rather than the Southern District of New York, and I just could not get my hands on the actual lawsuits in these two particular cases. But as I was searching for those, I found a lawsuit that somehow slipped through the cracks of a lot of people. I mean, not many people are talking about this particular lawsuit that came out on October 15th in the Southern District, and that was a lawsuit filed by Ashley Parham. And this particular lawsuit is really descriptive and really well written and detailed, so I'm going to go over it with you now. And the lawyer for Ashley Parham is a woman by the name of Ariel Mitchell, who's a very popular lawyer from Miami. And it says the plaintiff, Ashley Parham, is an individual who resides in and is domiciled in California. And of course, it goes through who Diddy is, which we all know who he is, at least publicly. And incidentally, before I get into the factual allegations, it's Sean Combs that's being sued along with Shane Pierce, and they've got some John Does and a Jane Doe. They're all being sued, but the two main ones listed by name are, of course, Sean Combs and a guy named Shane Pierce. So the factual allegations are as follows. Plaintiff met defendant Shane in February 2018 after an altercation with another man at a bar, and defendant Shane came to the plaintiff's rescue. While outside the bar with friends and other patrons, defendant Shane FaceTime video called defendant Diddy and was showing people defendant Diddy in the video on his phone. He was attempting to impress people with his famous friend. Defendant Shane then showed plaintiff defendant Diddy on the video call, which the plaintiff ignored, stating she was not impressed by him knowing defendant Diddy because she believed defendant Diddy had something to do with the murder of rapper Tupac Shakur. Visible in the FaceTime call was defendant Diddy and some of his children, including his sons Christian and Quincy. It appeared from the plaintiff's perspective that defendant Diddy was having a quote, get together at his home during the time of the FaceTime call with defendant Shane. Defendant Diddy heard plaintiff's statement and made a remark that plaintiff would pay for her statement regarding Tupac and overall dismissal of defendant Diddy. He didn't like the fact that she wasn't impressed, right? Then on March of 2018, Shane invited the plaintiff over to his home to assist him with his cancer medications, because he stated he was weak and unable to open the medicines. So apparently they became friends after this. Upon plaintiff's arrival, Shane informed plaintiff he wanted to give her a ride in his new car. Plaintiff and Shane left his residence for a brief period and then returned. Once they returned, Shane left the door to his apartment partially open and stated that the door was ajar because there was an issue with the door where it could not close properly. Shane was renting an apartment on the lower floor of a home in Orinda, California. Defendant Shane had a separate entrance to his residence that led to the backyard of the home. The home also had a main entrance on Loma Vista Drive. Shane rented the home from a woman who lived in the upstairs portion of the home, and they had 2 dogs who resided with her. And you may wonder, she's being specific here, or the lawsuit is being specific because they want to be able to prove that she was actually there. And if she can describe, hey, there were 2 dogs, the home had a main entrance here and a side entrance here, all that sort of stuff, it proves she's actually been in there and she ain't full of shit. Plaintiff and Shane then began to watch a movie, and Shane offered her a glass of water, which he retrieved and brought back to the plaintiff. Approximately 10 minutes after the plaintiff and Shane returned from their drive, Diddy entered Shane's residence. Diddy entered the home in a grand, ready-to-party manner. His grandiose entrance was so loud the dogs upstairs began barking. Diddy did not enter the home through the backyard entrance, but instead through the main entrance. Along with Diddy were his bodyguard, Doe 1, a woman who plaintiff later identified as KK, another woman with a small skinny build, early 30s with blonde mid-length hair, who plaintiff has still been unable to identify. Defendant Doe 2, who upon information and belief is a friend of Shane's and Diddy's, and Diddy's driver, who they're calling Doe 3, remained outside and in his vehicle during the duration of the plaintiff's assault. Plaintiff believes Shane invited her over to set her up to be assaulted by Diddy because of the statement she made about Diddy a month prior, the Tupac statement. Upon Diddy's arrival, he immediately began to antagonize the plaintiff, stating that she thought she would never see him in person, and she was going to pay for her statements about Tupac during the video call that Diddy caught. The plaintiff was in shock. She never believed she would ever see or meet Diddy in real life, let alone in a small apartment rented by Shane. Diddy then began advancing toward the plaintiff, who was sitting on Shane's bed with a knife, and held it to the right side of the plaintiff's face and threatened to give her a Glasgow smile in retaliation for her previous statements on the video call. And y'all, a Glasgow smile is where you just slice both sides of their face at the corner of their lips and make basically a smile with it. KK told defendant Diddy that she did not think giving plaintiff a Glasgow smile would be advantageous to their potential clients who they could sell the plaintiff for sex to. KK then made a threat to the plaintiff that they could ship her off anywhere in the world and that she would never see her family or anyone she knew ever again. Shane then partially undressed the plaintiff as Diddy removed the remainder of the plaintiff's clothing, removing the knife from her face, and then retrieved a bottle of liquid from a large fanny pack. Diddy then squirted a bottle of liquid on the plaintiff, which placed her in fear that she was being squirted with a chemical substance like acid. Plaintiff soon realized the substance was an oil/lubricant. Yeah, like those 1,000 bottles of baby oil he had at his house. The plaintiff was squirted with this liquid substance over her entire naked body. KK was then told by Diddy to insert what looked like a syringe from sterile packaging into the plaintiff's vagina. KK did as told and then told Diddy she was unable to use the IUD because it had prematurely been released from its packaging. Diddy, upset by this, took the syringe from KK and tried inserting it into the plaintiff's vagina instead. KK and Diddy began to argue, and KK continued to advise Diddy that since the IUD had been prematurely released from its packaging, there was no way they could insert it into the plaintiff's vagina effectively. After some time, Diddy heeded the advice of KK and removed the syringe from the plaintiff's vagina and handed it to KK. KK and Jane Doe then exited Shane's residence, leaving the plaintiff alone with Diddy, Shane, and Doe's 1 and 2. Diddy then picked up a television remote that was near the plaintiff and violently inserted it into the plaintiff's vagina. Diddy, while violently raping the plaintiff with the television remote, told the plaintiff that her life was in his hands and that if he wanted, he could take her and she would never be seen again. Plaintiff began hysterically crying from the threats by Diddy, along with the pain of being violently, vaginally raped by Diddy with the television remote, as well as the lingering pain from the ordeal with the syringe insertion. Diddy then instructed Shane to turn the plaintiff on her stomach and seemingly tired of hearing the plaintiff's blood-curdling cries. Shane then grabbed plaintiff by her abdomen and hips and turned the plaintiff on her stomach. Diddy instructed Shane to put a pillow over her head because he did not want to see her face or hear her cry, and instructed Shane to anally rape the plaintiff. Shane did as he was told by Diddy and began to anally rape the plaintiff. Diddy then violently raped the plaintiff anally as well. Defendant Doe number 2 then joined Diddy and Shane, taking a turn anally raping the plaintiff. Immediately after defendant Doe raped the plaintiff, he exited Shane's residence. Diddy then instructed Doe number 1 to also rape the plaintiff. Instead of immediately raping the plaintiff, Doe 1 doused the plaintiff with more oil/lubricant, then jumped on top of the plaintiff's naked and oiled body, treating it like a slip and slide and knocking the wind out of the plaintiff due to his enormous size. Doe 1 then caught himself from sliding over plaintiff's oiled body and off the bed, and he began raping the plaintiff vaginally. While Doe 1 was raping the plaintiff, Diddy sat in a chair near the bed and began masturbating while recording the plaintiff's rape by Doe number 1. Another party's phone fell on the bed near the plaintiff. The plaintiff then attempted to grab the phone but slipped out of her hands onto the floor due to the oil lubricant that had been doused all over her by Diddy and Doe number 1. Diddy began laughing at plaintiff attempting to grab that phone. Throughout this violent gangbang-style rape, Diddy made constant belittling remarks to the plaintiff, including that he owned her now. The plaintiff's body was becoming more and more limp over the course of this violent rape until eventually she had no control over her body, nor could she move. When defendant Doe finished raping the plaintiff, KK entered the room to examine the condition of the plaintiff, who was barely able to move or control her bodily functions. KK examined the plaintiff to see if she needed assistance and was about to give the plaintiff an IV fluid. Plaintiff cannot be certain if she did or did not receive the IV. KK then opened a different bag, different than the one Diddy removed the oil from, where the plaintiff observed several medication bottles, IV fluid bags, and other unidentified powder-like drugs. KK then removed a pill from the medicine bottles and gave it to Diddy. Diddy then inserted the pill into the plaintiff's mouth down her throat, where the plaintiff had no choice but to ingest the unknown pill. Diddy, Shane, KK, and Doe 1 then exited the residence to the backyard where they smoked marijuana and cigarettes. Plaintiff remained in an almost lifeless state in defendant Shane's bedroom until she finally regained her bodily functions. Plaintiff then began looking for her clothes in her purse that contained her car keys and cell phone, but could not discover them in the room or anywhere in the apartment. Plaintiff was only able to find a t-shirt on the floor, which she put on to cover her naked body. The plaintiff observed a black condom wrapper on the floor of the bedroom, which she assumed was used by one of the defendants, most likely Diddy, during the rape. The plaintiff then grabbed a knife from the kitchen and headed to the backyard where the defendants were smoking, as that was the only way to exit the premises onto the street. The plaintiff concealed the knife on her left side as she exited the apartment in the backroom area. Upon coming to the exit of the home, which led to the backyard, the plaintiff was met by Doe 1, who was standing at the door between the residence and the backyard. By the time the plaintiff was able to compose herself and come to the backyard, KK was no longer in the backyard, but upstairs on the patio balcony with Jane Doe. Defendant Doe number 1 allowed the plaintiff to walk into the backyard where defendant Shane and Diddy were still smoking. Defendant Doe 1 did not see the knife that the plaintiff concealed on her left side, as it was obstructed by the oversized t-shirt the plaintiff was wearing. The plaintiff observed Diddy still partially nude from the assault, while Shane and Doe 1 had on all their clothing. Shane then left the upstairs portion of the patio/balcony where KK and Jane Doe were already situated. Plaintiff then sat down on a makeshift seat in the backyard when Diddy noticed her presence and remarked that he was surprised she was able to walk because he had given her enough drugs to take out a horse. Plaintiff then asked Diddy what he gave her, and he laughed and did not provide a response. Defendant then made further comments to the plaintiff in a jovial, friendly manner, asking her why they hadn't partied together before, because it was so much fun and he hadn't had any ass that tight in a while. Doe 1 then quipped at defendant Diddy that he probably hadn't had any ass that tight because he's not used to having anal sex with women, which Diddy and Doe 1 both laughed at. Plaintiff then told Diddy she did not party with him and she did not enjoy partying with him and that he raped her. Diddy didn't like the plaintiff's response to his lighthearted commentary and offered the plaintiff money and instructed the plaintiff to say the violent rape was consensual and that the plaintiff was a sex worker. The plaintiff became enraged and yelled at Diddy that her rape was not consensual, she was not a sex worker, and she refused to take any money from him and would tell the police that he raped her. Diddy then told the plaintiff no one would ever believe she had been raped by him, and if she did tell anyone, they would harm her family. Doe 1 then showed plaintiff his phone, which looked as if it were outside of the plaintiff's estranged sister's residence, as she could see her sister sitting on the couch and her sister's spouse on the balcony. It looked as if someone was outside streaming this video to defendant Doe number 1's phone. Plaintiff was rattled by what she was seeing on the phone and was still angry about being gang raped, and was not complying with Diddy's request to take the money being offered to say the rape was consensual. Diddy then called his mother in an effort to further convince the plaintiff not to report the assault. Diddy's mother yelled at the plaintiff to not hurt her son. The plaintiff told Diddy's mother that her son had violently raped her. Diddy's mother, seemingly unfazed by this statement, then continued her demands with the plaintiff to take the money being offered and not report the rape to law enforcement. Diddy then made further threats that he had gotten off from bigger crimes than this and referred to Tupac again, further antagonizing the plaintiff. Doe 1 then turned to Diddy and pulled his gun on him, asking him to repeat what he said in reference to Tupac. As the two of them were exchanging words, the plaintiff went behind Doe 1 where he seemingly began to protect the plaintiff. Doe 1 then advanced to Diddy, questioning him over the comments he made about Tupac. During the commotion, a neighbor directly across the street came outside and peered into the backyard and asked what all the commotion was about. Doe 1 then pointed the gun at the neighbor and instructed him to mind his business and returned to his residence. Doe 1 then turned the gun back on Diddy. Plaintiff, not far behind Doe 1, then tried to grab Doe 1's hand that had the gun. The gun went off and hit a hill behind Shane's residence. Diddy then ran up the back stairs near the hill in the backyard toward where KK, Shane, and Jane Doe were. The plaintiff charged towards Diddy, moving the concealed knife from her left hand to her right hand and in pursuit of Diddy. The plaintiff then pushed Diddy from behind while on the stairs, causing him to fall with his back to the plaintiff. The plaintiff then raised the knife, and in a rage of events that just transpired and with the intent of driving the knife into Diddy's back when he turned around and pleaded for his life like a little bitch. That part, not in the lawsuit. That was my addition. Plaintiff, now shocked to see defendant Diddy acting as a victim, had a moment of clarity and turned and ran down the staircase back to the backyard to escape. Diddy then chased the plaintiff down the stairs and attempted to push her, but she was already at the bottom of the stairs, gained her footing, and wielded the knife at Diddy, grazing his abdomen. Hearing the commotions, KK and Jane Doe emerged, and KK then began administering first aid to Diddy for the injuries caused by the plaintiff. The plaintiff tried to make a quick dash for the exit, but it was thwarted by Doe number 1. After a period of time, the plaintiff was able to abscond from Doe 1 due to the first aid commotion with Diddy and was able to run down the street. Once the plaintiff made it to the street, she began yelling loudly for someone to call the police. Doe 1, who had now caught up with the plaintiff, advised the plaintiff he was an undercover cop. To this day, the plaintiff is unsure of the truth or falsity of that statement. The same neighbor then again emerged from his residence and asked what was transpiring. Just as the plaintiff was attempting to answer, gunshots began being fired in the plaintiff's direction. The plaintiff fled to her car, where the neighbor was also taking cover and lost sight of Doe number 1. Plaintiff then heard an SUV screeching and speeding, leaving the residence. Plaintiff then entered the home of the neighbor, who informed her he had already called the police. The plaintiff informed the neighbor it was Sean Combs who had raped her and shot at them, but the neighbor was unaware even who Diddy was. Shortly thereafter, a sheriff from the Contra Costa Sheriff's Department arrived at the neighbor's home. The plaintiff told the sheriff she had been violently gang raped by defendant Diddy and others, and that she did not have her clothes, phone, purse, car keys, or cell phone. The sheriff told the plaintiff and the neighbor that they had received several noise complaints prior to the neighbor's call and instructed the plaintiff to find another way to get home. The sheriff did not offer to take the plaintiff home, nor did he call emergency services, including an ambulance, nor any other offer to take the plaintiff to the hospital, nor any other offer to help the plaintiff recover her clothes or effects from defendant Shane's residence. The neighbor offered to let the plaintiff sleep on his couch until she could figure out a way to get her possessions and get home, but the plaintiff declined and only remained at the neighbor's residence for a short period of time once the sheriff left. The plaintiff then went back to Shane's residence, where she found the door open and her clothes were readily accessible at his residence. Shane then emerged as if nothing had transpired and offered for the plaintiff to stay at his residence while she slept it off, quote unquote. The plaintiff asked for her purse and her keys, but Shane told her she shouldn't leave in that condition, and the plaintiff, catatonic and in a state of shock and disbelief of the events that had transpired, ended up staying at Shane's home while the defendant, Shane, left the home. Later that morning, Shane returned to the residence, woke the plaintiff up, and finally gave her back her purse, cell phone, and keys, and the plaintiff left the residence. In a daze, the plaintiff returned home and tried to make sense of what happened to her. On March 26 of 2018, the plaintiff contacted her primary care doctor and asked for an HIV and STD test in fears of possibly having contracted a disease from her violent rape. The plaintiff tried to continue her life as she felt she wouldn't have been believed, and y'all, that's common, as plaintiff had already told Contra Costa Sheriff's defendant Diddy raped her to no avail. Further, the plaintiff was under the impression that if she did continue to say Diddy's name in relation to the assault, she wouldn't be believed and her family would definitely be in danger. Mere days, maybe even the day before the plaintiff's vicious rape, Shane had miraculously began driving a new car. Plaintiff believes this was payment by Diddy for setting up the plaintiff to be raped. A few weeks later, in April of 2018, the plaintiff, still in pain and reeling from the horrific event, went to the hospital as her injuries had not subsided from the assault. The hospital conducted several tests on the plaintiff, including a rape kit, ultrasound, and x-rays. Additionally, the plaintiff was given IV fluids to stabilize her vitals as she was in severe weakened state from being unable to eat and losing a substantial amount of weight since the rape occurred. While at the hospital, the plaintiff told members of her treatment team about her horrific assault and then contacted the Walnut Creek police. The Walnut Creek police showed up to the plaintiff's hospital room and took a statement regarding her assault, which occurred on March 23rd. Plaintiff had already told Contra Costa sheriffs about her rape and that it was defendant Diddy who orchestrated it on March 23rd of 2018, which was ignored. The plaintiff declined to refer to Diddy again to the Walnut Creek police because she believed she would be ignored again by those police just as she was by that sheriff's department and would be further harmed by Diddy if he discovered she named him to police. Plaintiff only told Walnut Creek police about the assault from defendant Shane and Doe number 2. Plaintiff believes her statements made to Walnut Creek police while at the hospital were captured by body camera footage. Plaintiff further believes her statements made to the sheriff on March 23rd, immediately after the vicious assault, where the plaintiff named Diddy directly by name, were also captured by body camera footage. Plaintiff also filed a report to the Oneida Police Department on April 17, 2018, but again was too afraid to name Diddy as one of her assailants. During this report, the plaintiff provided her clothing to the police from the night of the assault, but they only retained her underwear. To date, the underwear was never returned, and the plaintiff believes no investigation was ever commenced. Plaintiff sought assistance from therapists in May of 2018, one of which tried to have her therapy appointments covered by the victim's compensation fund, which was rejected because the plaintiff was told no law enforcement agency had opened an active investigation into her reports. Subsequently thereafter, plaintiff asked police for a copy of a report from the Walnut Creek Police Department. On July 19th of 2018, the plaintiff was provided a letter from the Walnut Creek Police Department stating that it was unable to furnish this information as it is confidential and not subject to public release. In March of 2024, plaintiff was re-traumatized by all the events surrounding Diddy, including several civil complaints filed against him, as well as the raid on Diddy's California and Florida residences. The plaintiff then called the Contra Costa sheriff again in hopes of renewing her previous complaint and amending it to ensure Diddy's name was included. Plaintiff received no response from the sheriff. Plaintiff in July of 2024 then emailed the chief of the sheriff's office regarding her complaint, lack of investigation, and how she was treated by the initial responding officer. The plaintiff then later received a call back from a detective, but then nothing further. The plaintiff then began seeking legal counsel for her claim and ultimately referred to undersigned for representation. Undersigned counsel also attempted to get a copy of the 2018 police report from that sheriff, but was told they would not provide a report or any other information without a subpoena. And there you have that. So while you're digesting that, probably one of the most shocking things outside of all these allegations was made by a judge in this case. And this just came out in the past couple of days. And y'all, I'm going to reference an article from the New York Times. And the decision here absolutely blew my mind. And I'll be curious to know if it blows your mind too. So let me read it and then we'll talk about it. And the headline on this says, Diddy accuser must reveal name or rape case will be thrown out, judge rules. A woman who anonymously sued the rapper failed to prove that revealing her identity would cause mental harm, the judge ruled, noting that public humiliation is not enough. A woman who anonymously sued Sean Diddy Combs this month for rape must reveal her name or her lawsuit will be tossed out, a judge has ruled. The woman's complaint, filed under Jane Doe in the Southern District of New York, accuses Combs of raping her in 2004 at a Manhattan hotel when she was a 19-year-old college student. However, U.S. District Judge Mary Viskel in a ruling Wednesday, said that while this case is highly sensitive and Jane Doe is likely to face public scrutiny if she proceeds under her own name, her desire to remain anonymous does not outweigh the interests of Combs and the public in the customary and constitutionally embedded presumption of openness in judicial proceedings. The judge said the woman's complaint provided insufficient evidence that she would face significant risk of harm if publicly named. The judge said her lawyers offered no support for this assertion beyond the fact that 20 years ago, Combs threatened Doe's life if she fled at the time of the alleged rape. I mean, really? That sounds like something pretty serious to me. The complaint also said that Combs had no contact with Doe in the years since and noted that Combs is currently detained. The judge also said that her lawyers failed to provide evidence that revealing Doe's identity would cause mental harm, noting that public humiliation was not enough. She said they failed to submit evidence from a mental health professional or a sworn affidavit from Doe. The judge also said she has to consider the fairness to Combs' camp in defending himself, which would be difficult without her identity being made public, given that the alleged attack happened 20 years ago. Defendants have the right to defend themselves, including by investigating the plaintiff, and the people have a right to know who is using their courts. In denying the motion, the judge gave Jane Doe until November 13th to file a complaint in her own name or the case would be dismissed. Attorney Tony Busby filed the lawsuit under the Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act, under which victims have a 2-year window ending in March of 2025 to file older claims. The suit was one of 6 complaints Busby filed in the Southern District of New York, all anonymously on October 14th. And of course, we covered those. So there you have that, and pretty shocking to me. And I'm curious on what side of that you folks are. But there you have it. That is the latest in the Diddy Saga as of this recording. And look, next week, the Diddy Saga episode is going to be epic. The planned Diddy Saga episode, of course. The way things are falling in this case and just dropping on the daily, something may come out that supersedes what I have planned, but everybody's talking about those freak-offs, right? And what they were actually like. Well, I have an interview with someone who was there and was pressured to engage in the freak-offs. So I'm going to bring you that next week. And all I can tell you is it's eye-opening. And I'm also going to give you some other information regarding those freak-offs from people who allegedly participated. So all of that is coming to you next week. We got a Murdaugh episode coming at you. This will be episode 10 on Thursday. That is absolutely fire. So you're going to want to check that out. And again, check out the Patreon. We need everybody's support. And look, tomorrow is election day. So go vote. I don't care who you vote for, just vote. Your voice is important. Have it heard. Let your voice get out there. And until next time, for Exposed, Scandalous Files of the Elite, I am your host, Jim Chapman. Much love.